Good evening, Robinson ISD. Thank you for joining us. My name is Michael Hope, and I'm the superintendent of Robinson ISD. I'm here to provide you with factual information about the proposed bond package that will be on the ballot this May. This presentation will cover the details of the bond, including its purpose, the planning process, proposed projects, and the potential tax impact. Our goal is to ensure you have all the information you need to make an informed decision. The Robinson ISD vision, mission, motto, values, and learner profile drive the decisions of our district. These guiding principles were created through a collaborative effort with Robinson parents, staff, community members, and business leaders, and adopted by the board in February 2022. Before diving into the bond specifics, it's important to understand how school funding works in Texas. School districts operate with two primary budgets. The Maintenance and Operations, or M&O budget, covers day-to-day expenses like salaries, utilities, and supplies. Approximately 80% of this budget is dedicated to teacher and staff salaries. The Interest and Sinking, or INS budget, funds long-term capital improvements such as new construction, renovations, and major repairs. The proposed bond falls under the INS budget. To illustrate how funding flows, please watch the following two videos. The first will tell you how Texas school funding works. The second will show you how a dollar is allocated in Texas school districts.
The public education system in Texas is huge and critical to the future of our state. Smart planning and adequate funding are essential to making the system work for each and every Texan. Where does the money for public education come from? Let's break it down. First, think of funding schools like filling up a glass of water. The water in the glass represents the amount of money the Texas legislature allocates to educate each student. The water is sourced from two primary pitchers. The first is school district revenue generated by local property taxes. The second is state funds, which are generated by things like sales taxes, business taxes, and lottery proceeds. The water glass has the ability to shrink or grow. But many people are surprised to learn that the size of a Texas school district's water glass, or how much money is available for and spent on day-to-day school operations, is decided almost entirely by the state legislature, not school boards or superintendents. Under state law, schools receive a certain amount of per-student funding based on specific student demographics and district characteristics. Funding formulas designed by the legislature provide school districts with general operating funds, most of which cover salaries for teachers and staff. Other parts of the funding formula are designated for specific priorities like career and technical programs, early childhood education, and more. While the state legislature decides how big the water glass is, how much money the state actually contributes is contingent on the amount of local property taxes generated by a school district. In our complex school funding system, when local property values go up and tax collections increase, local schools do not receive more funding. Instead, the state simply pours less water into the glass, even though more state funds were originally budgeted and intended for public education. But what happens if school district revenue generated by local property taxes is able to fill the whole glass? More water is poured than the glass size can hold. The state collects those overflowing funds in a separate water pitcher that holds general revenues for the state. So when a school district's property tax revenues go up, those dollars are not always reinvested back into our schools.
And here's how a dollar is allocated in our district.
Providing adequate resources to support and serve all students in our Texas public schools requires a substantial amount of funding. And the money we invest in our schools matters. But once that funding arrives at school districts, how does it actually get allocated? A good way to understand how school districts invest their resources is to look at how each dollar is spent, or how the money is poured into our schools. Right off the top, over half of every dollar covers instruction and paying teachers, the backbone of our public schools. The next largest budget category is facility maintenance. Public schools have large physical footprints, and keeping the lights on, the water flowing, the grass cut, and more requires significant resources. Together, paying teachers and maintaining facilities accounts for about 2/3 of public school spending. The remaining third has to stretch a long way. About 15% of funds provide for additional staff like nurses, counselors, principals, instructional coaches, and district administrators. Just under 10% goes towards basic student needs of transportation to and from school and student meals. Extracurricular programming, including the fine arts and athletic programs that inspire and cultivate student and family enthusiasm, accounts for about 3% of spending. Other needs, like IT infrastructure and school safety provisions, are covered by the remaining funds. This is how school funding supports and maintains well-running schools.
I hope this gives you an idea of how schools are funded in Texas and also how the money is allocated at the school district. The bond proposal is a result of a collaborative long-range planning process that began at the end of 2019. We engaged community members, staff, parents, and business leaders to envision the future of Robinson ISD. This process, though delayed by COVID-19, culminated in a strategic plan adopted by the school board in February 2022. This plan focused on teaching and learning, mental health, college, career, and military readiness, facilities, community relations, and human capital. The facilities objectives that came from this study were to enhance current facilities to provide equitable and safe environments for all stakeholders, enhance current facilities through renovations, new facilities to provide specialized programs that prepare students for a competitive workforce, and enhance current facilities and/or build new junior high to provide an equitable and safe environment for all stakeholders. Once that study was completed, the district worked with the Texas Association of School Boards to do a staffing analysis for efficiencies and compensation study for efficiencies. These studies were presented to the school board by TASB. Next, Zonda Education was employed to do a demographic study of Robinson ISD to project housing, commercial, and enrollment growth. Along with the Zonda Education demographic study, a facility and capacity assessment was done for each campus. Then, our financial advisor, Specialized Public School Finance, did a financial capacity assessment and presented to the board. With this information, the board asked for a facilities planning committee to look at all of the information to make any recommendations they may have. This facilities planning committee, again made up of parents, staff, business leaders, community members, and also students, met from September to December 2024, ultimately recommending the $95.495 million proposal to the board in January 2025. This slide gives you the building capacity summaries for each campus in Robinson ISD at this time. As we look at the current enrollment or current capacities and current students in Robinson ISD, as provided from the Zonda demographic study, it shows you where we are as a district and for each campus. At this time, the primary school is over capacity and projections show it to grow worse as the timeline goes to 2033, 2034. The high school looks like it would reach capacity by the 33-34 school year, and a few other campuses would see strains due to that growth. The following graphs show you the district and campus capacities along with the student projections from Zonda demographic study once new construction and renovation was done if the bond was passed. The first one shows you the district, which would not have any issues with capacity past the 2033-34 school year. As you look at the new renovated high school campus that's currently out in the junior high, capacity would be no issues. We will talk about a grade realignment, but without talking about that first, here's how the other campuses would look as far as capacity. Once the construction was done at the primary, there would be no issues. Looking at the elementary that continued to have 2 grade levels, there would be no issues. With the renovated band hall into classrooms, which would add 100+ student capacity at the intermediate, there would be no issues as far as capacity at the intermediate. And then for the junior high, 6, 7, and 8, moving over to the current high school, there would be no capacity issues. The grade realignments that are proposed to make sure all buildings are used efficiently shows that the first grade would move from the primary to the elementary. Third grade would move from the elementary to intermediate. Sixth grade would move from the intermediate to the junior high. And then 9 through 12 would still be at the high school on the new campus at the current junior high. The bond will address the aging facilities, enhance programs on campus, and safety and technology. The projects that are included in this bond are a new renovated high school at the junior high campus for a total of $93.5 million, renovate the band hall into classrooms at the intermediate school for $1.5 million, and safety and technology updates for $495,000 for a total again of $95.495 million. This rendering shows you what the current junior high campus looks like. You see all the buildings that are currently involved in educating the students at the junior high level. This next slide shows you in the red outlines the buildings that would be demolished if this bond was passed as they complete the renovations and new construction. This overall site plan shows you both the new and the existing structures that would make up the new high school campus. 65% of the school would be an all-new building. The remaining 35% would be fully renovated, meaning there would not be a renovated school classroom. They would gut the entire building and it would look as brand new. The 200,000 square feet approximate size of the high school would include 120,000 square feet of new construction and approximately 80,000 square feet of renovated construction. On this next rendering of the overall site plan, you see a little bit more detail on the different areas of the school. As you look in the new construction on the 2-story structure here at the bottom, which includes your new administration and library media services, which would be on that 2nd floor. To the right of that, you see the 2-story core academic classroom wing, which is brand new. Again, a new dining facility area. The CTE section that is labeled would be entirely new. The practice gym is our current gym that would be fully renovated. The competition gym would be a brand new addition to the school. The auditorium, again, would be new construction. The central administration fine arts classrooms, that would be a part of a renovated cafetorium and band hall. And then you would have the renovated classrooms that are in the original main section of the current junior high. Also point out that there is a courtyard. One of the things that was wanted is a green space for our kids to be, but also within the boundaries and the confines of the school, meaning they are in a safe place. Dining, they can come out and eat outside. Classrooms can come out to use the outside also. This rendering shows you a view of the main entryway to the high school from Lindale. One of the main concerns and one of the main things that this proposal will help is traffic flow. Instead of having 4 grade levels of traffic on Tate, this will shift the 4 grade levels over on Lindale. Lindale is a much wider street and can take the traffic flow easier. As we move and look a little bit more closely at this main entry, this is the entry where all parents and visitors will go. This is not a student entrance, so we have those separated. As you're moving around from the main entrance, you're seeing the new construction of the 2-story where the library media services and the offices are, as well as you can see the core academic wing in the far right. As we move around to look at the west facade, this is facing the football field. You see the 2-story academic wing, library media services, and administration part. You also see the student entry. This is dedicated to student entry only, helps with the monitoring of our students, and also is a 1 out, 1 in to help with safety. If you are looking from the student entry all the way through to the back of the campus, you would eventually see this other end. So immediately from the other end of the student entry, you have where your auditorium is and the new competition gym. Here you will have a place that is free from traffic for parents, students, teams to gather before and after events. Also, if the district is hosting a tournament with out-of-town teams or a performance from the community, and it's during the day, our students are still separated from these facilities. Okay, what will the tax rate be or the tax impact for Robinson ISD community? If the voters approve the bond, there will be a projected 15-cent INS tax impact. For the average home in Robinson, which is valued at $346,054, that would be an impact of $30.76 a month. This slide shows you a little bit more on the tax impact based on different home values. One thing to note is that the $100,000 state homestead exemption that the legislature passed a few sessions ago, it is included in this estimation. We do know that the legislature is working on increasing that homestead exemption. However, we cannot show an impact for the positive for a taxpayer until that legislation is actually passed. How does Robinson ISD's tax rate compare with our other districts? At this moment, our tax rate is one of the lowest in the area. And if the bond passes, the new tax rate is projected to be 1.097. That will still remain lower than many districts in the area. As far as the Robinson ISD tax rate history, this chart gives you an idea of over the years, as the board could lower the tax rate, the board did. If you look at the 2015, that $1.51 tax rate included the new tax impact from the 2014 bond for the current intermediate. When that bond was being proposed, we were told it would be a 24.5-cent tax increase for a $19.5 million bond. Because of Robinson ISD's financial rating and the interest rates at the time, once those bonds were sold, the actual tax impact was 19.5 cents instead of the 24.5, so a 5-cent benefit for our taxpayers. Here is the Robinson ISD tax history, total tax rate from 2003 to 2025. Included, so you can compare, is what would it look like compared to our past tax rates if the bond passed. And that is the far right tax rate is if the bond passed. Homeowners 65 and older and are disabled, there will be no tax increase if this bond passed. Under state law, the dollar amount of school taxes imposed on the residence homestead of a person 65 years of age or older cannot be increased above the amount paid in the first year after the person turned 65 or became disabled. This freeze applies regardless of changes in tax rate or property value unless there are new improvements, additions to the homestead. You must apply for this homestead exemption. As we just mentioned, if you are 65 and older, your school tax amount cannot increase. However, on the ballot, you will see this is a property tax increase. The Texas legislature passed laws in 2019 requiring all school bond elections to include the following language on the ballot. This is a property tax increase. The state mandates all bond ballots to include this language regardless of what individual exemptions each voter may have. The passage or failure of this bond will not impact your school district tax amount if you have an approved homestead exemption. Details to note. Early voting is April 22nd through the April 29th. Election day is Saturday, May 3rd. Visit RobinsonISDbond.com for voting times and locations. Thank you for taking the time to learn about the Robinson ISD bond proposal. We've covered the purpose of the bond, the planning process, proposed projects, and the potential tax impact. Our goal today was to provide you with factual information to help you make an informed decision. If you have further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out at the email address at the bottom of this screen. Thank you, and we appreciate your engagement in this important process.